Hi everyone, this is That Brown Bitch and I'm your host Nalani Slavasingam. Joining me today, I've got the lovely Suganiya and Vinu. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, ladies.
No
You're
problem.
welcome.
So the reason I decided to do this episode was I feel like when I was growing up, I was always like, oh, being the oldest is the best. Oldest children are the best. Like I always felt like that. But somehow that shifted to I hate being the oldest. Being the oldest is the worst. And I just felt myself always complaining about it, never saying any of the good things. So I decided to do this episode to have me being the oldest of five. And then we have Suganiya, who's the quintessential middle child. You've got one older sister and one younger brother. I feel like anything more than three kids, I feel like it kind of changes the dynamic. So I have Suganiya for middle child, and then I have Vinu, who is the youngest of four, with the older sister and two older brothers. I would have asked, like, I was actually planning to get somebody who was like an only child to come on, but I was like, that's too sad. That would just end up being really sad. And I really don't know that many people that are only children. Like Akash and I were thinking about it the other day, and we came up with one person, and we're like, "Are you serious?" Like in our generation, not like younger people, but we could only think of one person. And then today, I went for a walk in the morning, and I thought of like two other people that are like family members. I don't know why I didn't think of them, but I thought of two more people. But we don't really find that in our generation too much. So I was just like, okay, I think this is probably just like the best way to go. So maybe just to start off, I think the listeners have heard a lot about me and I'm always talking about my family. Maybe for them to just know a little bit about you guys, a little bit background on you guys. Vinu, maybe you can start just a little bit about your family dynamic.
Sure. So I'm the youngest, as everybody knows. All my friends know. I've made it very clear, and I bring it up all the time. But another thing is, my siblings are a lot older than me, so it's a little different. Like I know it's going to be different from other people's situations, being the youngest child. My sister's 12 years older than me. She's practically like a second mom, and then my brothers are 10 and 6 years older than me. So yeah, I just thought I'm pretty much the baby and I will forever be the baby, even if I am the age that I am right now. So yeah, that's
And
it.
you have like nieces and stuff, like they're not your age, but they're like, I feel like you may even relate to them a little bit more than you do to your own siblings, right?
Yeah, it's shocking because my sister has two teenagers. One is turning 19 and the other one's 16. And they're like my sisters. They're like my little sisters. Like I can relate to them so much. I don't know what that says about me, but I can relate to that. Like we have so much in common. It's crazy.
And what about you, Suganya? Like I said, quintessential middle child. And I feel like you always bring that up too, that you're a middle child.
I
So
did.
how do you think it was? How's your family dynamic like?
Yeah, so my older sister, she's 3 years older than me, and I have a younger brother who's a year and a half. we we grew up more like friends, my brother and I, and my sister was just like missing in action. She just always did her own thing.
You know she's gonna be listening to this, right? Your
Yeah,
sister.
I know. I'm
She's
gonna get a
missing in
message
action.
like an essay from her after this. Like I can't believe this.
Like me, like for us, like me and my sister are 4 years apart, and then my sister and my brother are also 4 years apart. So I feel like my sister was always she was close to me, and she's also very close to my brother, like in terms of that, right? So they always like they have their like little inside jokes, and like me being the oldest, like I think I'm kind of in your sister's spot where like they'd always like gang up on me and like make fun of me like I'm so boring and I'm so like I have no idea what I'm doing and like they always do that. So I kind of understand your sister's point, I guess. So I'm gonna be supporting your sister today. Thank you. I just want to let you know that. I told you guys to think of one word that kind of describes how it was to grow up as a middle child or the youngest child. So, Gani, I'm going to start with you just because I feel like people are always doing like oldest to youngest or youngest to oldest. Like no one starts in the middle and works their way out. So I felt like I'm going to give you this opportunity to go first and let us know what is the one thing that you would describe being a middle child as like.
Forgotten. I was forgotten, Nalani.
That's really sad.
I was forgotten, but also it's like I'm also the quiet child. I'm the good kid, and where my siblings are the troublemakers. So my parents pretty much like ran behind them their entire lives.
So they felt like they didn't have to worry about you,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, they went to the Satram guide like every other week for my sibling to find out how to fix them. I have no
I'm
idea.
surprised you didn't rebel more, because I feel like if when you feel like you're forgotten, no one's really paying
Yeah.
attention to you, and you see that, oh, my siblings are doing this and this is what's getting them attention, I feel like it would be so natural and so easy for you to rebel so that you would get that attention that they're getting with
I
the
mean,
stuff that
I
they're doing.
tried to, I tried to, but I'm
In high
also very
school,
scared. Yeah, in high school, pretty much,
Suganiya in high school.
pretty much from 16 to like 22 or 23. I
Hmm.
tried, but I always went back to just being, you know, locked in my room and to myself.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just my nature.
How about you, Vinu? What would you use? What word would you say?
So the word I automatically came up with is spoiled. I think it's just the first thing that popped into my mind, and it's mainly because, yeah, like compared to my siblings, I definitely got whatever I wanted as a child. I mean, I don't think I'm like that now, but like, well, actually, maybe in some ways, there's still things that I like that my family does for me. But yeah, it's just I know there's a lot of things that I got, and I know my siblings didn't get when they were my age. So it's just I don't know if my parents were just so tired by the time they got to me. They were just
That's
so
the main
old.
thing.
Yeah, they were just so old. They're like, whatever, like fine, like we'll just do whatever you want.
Were
So
you parented by your parents growing up, or do you think your siblings like kind of took on a little bit of that role, like your sister?
mainly my parents, I would say, but my sister definitely played a big part when I was small because I want to say she moved out when I was pretty young, for university. So, I mean, from what I do remember, yeah, she was like a second parent, and she had a big part, I would say. And like even
Yeah.
my siblings would say, or like my mom would say that she would be like, even when I was a baby, she'd be changing my diapers, feeding me, taking care of me. So it started from then. She was 12.
Okay, so for me being the oldest, the only word that I could think of was pressure, because it's not even just with my siblings, but it's with my first cousins and stuff too. I was the oldest one out of all the ones that were here in Canada, at least. So I always felt like I had to be perfect. I always had to do the right things. And it wasn't just my parents looking at me, because my parents were too occupied with the other children. But I felt like aunts and uncles were looking at me, and they were kind of using me as an example, like, oh, be like her, like do what she's doing. And then I think like I guess when it took me like 6 years to finish like my undergrad, they were like, oh, she's not perfect. Nalani's not perfect. She's flawed, so just like everybody else. But I think until like university, until I finished university, I feel like I felt a lot of pressure. But now, once they got older and they're kind of my cousins were doing their own things and my siblings, then I kind of felt freer for me to do whatever I wanted to do and not feel like I always had to kind of put on this front for everybody. So
Exactly. And you
pressure,
kind of paved the way, sort of thing,
Yeah.
right? For the rest of your siblings. I feel like that's kind of the role of the oldest sibling.
for the
They kind of
most
pave the way.
part, but like my sis, like when you think there's certain things though, because I always kind of had to put on this little image. My sister did a lot of things at the same time I did. So it's not like I did it and then she just did it at an earlier age. It was
Mm-hmm.
like even when we got our tattoos, we both got it together. Even
Mm-hmm.
when we got our like piercings, like we both got it together.
Mm-hmm.
Even when it comes to drinking and stuff, like it was her that pushed it more. Like it wasn't even me,
Okay.
because it was just like this is not expected of me. So I have to kind of keep putting on this facade. And she was like the first like house party I had for one of my birthdays. She's the one that convinced my parents
Wow.
for me to invite people over and to drink, which
Okay.
was like unheard of. Like no one's parents were allowing their kids to have parties at their house with drinking. We were of legal age, but even then, and even like I think she started probably drinking even before me. Um, Not at an earlier age, but just before me. So I've caught up since. But at a
You might
point,
have
like she
even
was drinking
surpassed.
more.
You caught up, surpassed
Yeah.
now. You're somewhere else now.
For sure, for sure. But yeah, like it's just, I mean, it comes with the territory, I guess. And I just accepted it after a while. But
Yeah.
now things are good. Like I don't feel that anymore though.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. No, that's actually really interesting to hear that it's not necessarily you paving the way. It was kind of like along with your sister,
Yeah.
I
She's
see
you're
so
that
doing
more
it together.
comfortable.
I've seen that a lot. Like when I have clients and there's like an older sister and a younger sister, and it's the younger sister who's always, and they're more rebellious, and they're telling the sister, "No, do this. No, don't forget what Amma and Appa said. Do this, do
Yeah.
that."
Right.
That's true.
Yeah, I definitely was like that. But now I'm terrible. Like my sister's always trying to get me to calm down. It's okay. I'm just making up for lost time, I guess. But now
That
I'm
makes
like
sense.
the loose cannon that no one knows what she's going to do or say at any given point. So I guess, yeah, like age changes a lot of things, and the dynamic changes, and it just keeps changing and growing and evolving. I guess
Yeah.
it's cool.
So what I was gonna say is that again, like because my sister's so much older, yeah, the things that I was doing wasn't the same things that she was doing. Although she may have paved the way when it came to certain things. Um, I don't know, like she didn't really go out that much. So to my parents, it's like, oh, you're a girl and you're going out. Like we don't want you doing that. Like you're out of control, you know? So I mean, like there were certain points where I was like, okay, she didn't really pave the way for me because we're different generations as well, I feel like. So yeah,
That's
that's
true.
kind of like my
You guys are
experience.
different
We
generations.
are.
Like for her, even whatever you started doing it, when you started doing it, she was probably like, "Oh my gosh, like I would have never thought to do this, or I would have never done this. Like I can't believe
Yeah.
she's doing this." Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah.
because of the age gap.
Exactly. And and I still bring this up today. I was 20, I think I was like 22 years old. I was at her house and it was actually with you. I think it was with you, Nalani, and maybe Suganiya. I forgot if she was there, but we wanted to go somewhere. And it was like, my whole family was at my sister's house. It was like 8 o'clock or something, 8 o'clock at night. And I'm like, well, I want to go with my friends. And she's like, no, you're not going out at this time. And I'm like, I'm a 22-year-old adult. Like, I think I can make my own decisions. And she's just
Yeah.
like, no, like she was adamant about me not going. And she's just like, no, why are you going out this late? It's 8 o'clock. Like, really? Well, I mean, now I'm looking at it like, really? And like,
Yeah.
she has two daughters now that are teenagers. And I feel like she wouldn't be the same with them. Like, they're
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
whatever they want. So I
Hmm.
still bring it up. I'm like, I can't believe you're the person that you are now when back then when I was 22, that you wouldn't let me leave the house.
Right.
I find that to be so true with like a lot of my aunts. Like
Mhm,
my sister and I, we are one of the oldest out of our cousins. So
Hmm.
not only do we have pressure from our parents, but from our aunts and uncles too, because they all have little kids and who are not, doing anything bad. So it's like, oh, why are you doing this? Don't do that. You have to be like this. You're a Tamil girl. And then, but now all their kids are older, but they are doing things that we didn't do. I wouldn't say it's
Right.
bad things. It's just they're exploring more, right? So,
Hmm.
and they're okay with it now.
Yeah. It's different when it's your kid too,
Yeah.
right? Like I see that in talent parents so much, and it's so frustrating, but it is what it is. Like when they see other kids doing it, like even love marriage, like such a basic thing like love
Yeah.
marriage. It's like I can't believe like whatever, and for whatever reason, there's no way you should let them get married, and this is ridiculous, blah blah blah. And they have all these things to say. And then when it's their kids, it's like, I'll be a love panitina, I'm gonna say it. Like, all right, Vinu, hit us with one of your stories. Something that is like encompasses what growing up as a youngest child was for you.
um, so I mean, I was trying to think about a lot of things, and I feel like my dad spoiled me the most. So I thought I would throw a story about my dad and I in there somewhere.
Mhm.
I remember when I don't remember how old I was, but I really wanted this kitchen set. I think I was like 7, 8 years old, and it was really expensive. It was like at that time, anyways, it was like $250 or something like that. And like my dad, obviously, like our family, one income, four children. We're not like we were like probably close to being poor. But so yeah, it was a big deal. And my dad was like, no, like he's very careful with like his money and spending and things like that. So I just kept begging and begging. And eventually I got it. And I mean, I'm sure it didn't actually take that much. And I know if it was my brothers or my sister, like that wouldn't have even been a conversation. It's just because I'm the youngest, and I know like he always looked at me like the baby. And there's like a few stories like that where I wanted to get Aladdin, like the video copy of Aladdin. And we were at a store. I just happened to see it, and I'm like crying. I'm like, I want it, I want it. But I'm not leaving the store until I get Aladdin. And of course, and my dad's like, no, you're not getting it. And then eventually, of course, before we left, I got it. So I mean,
you have that VHS tape still?
I probably do in some box somewhere. I had like Aladdin and forgot there's a couple of others that I forced my dad to get for me. But yeah, so yeah, that's kind of what it is like. And like even when there's actually a funny story about like when I think I was like 3 or 4 years old. My dad wanted my brothers to take me to a park, and they're like, no, like we want to go play baseball with our friends, like they're playing already, like we don't want to take her. And then he's just like, no, like you have to take her, she wants to go to the park, take her to the park, right? And um, they took me to the park because they were forced, and obviously they were so unhappy about it. But what they thought of was that they're going to put me in a stroller and put me to sleep so that they could go and play baseball. So really, like my siblings were forced to do a lot of things that they don't want to do because my dad or my mom like made them. So yeah, that's pretty much what I have.
Did your parents like hit you at all when you were growing up?
My dad did not. My brother-in-law still says that I should have been hit more, based on the person that I am. The person that I am.
As a
He's
joke,
just
I'm
like
assuming.
that's the problem. My mom did. Like there's been definitely a few times where my mom she hit me. Yeah.
All right, Suganya, you want to go next? With your oh wait, again, it's only 2 to 3 stories. Suganya is what I asked for. I know you have a lot. Right? I need you to narrow that shit down, okay?
Okay, so as you know, I was a good kid. Not necessarily that I was a good kid, just compared to my siblings, okay? And
right. And what your parents knew.
Exactly. I just got away with a lot more because they didn't know. When I started going to high school, it was a new area, so that means making new friends, and I'm kind of a reserved person, so that was kind of hard to make friends when I started high school. And I had this one friend, and we only became friends because she was also new.
Okay.
Right? So,
yeah.
And of course she approached me and everything, we became friends, but I wasn't allowed to like leave the house. Like it's a new area. I don't even know where to go or how to go or anything. And so I had a curfew of being home 30 minutes after school was done. Let me remind you that it took me 30 minutes to walk home. Okay.
So you gotta leave right when school is done.
Yeah, exactly. So I would be home, but where are my siblings? I have no idea. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They're not home at all. And I don't ever remember, like my brother says that he got like yelled at and stuff for coming home late. I mean, like this guy never got beat up, but I don't remember any of that. Yeah, so eventually around grade 11 or something, I joined like this youth club with this one friend. I mean, I had like a lot of like cliques and everything, but I couldn't really like connect with anyone because a lot of these cliques, they came from like their elementary schools and everything, and they were always talking about stuff that happened when they were younger, and I couldn't really connect, and it was just like all the Bobby Brown girls or the cool black girls, or like I had a few Tamil friends, but they also had their own thing, and it was just very difficult. So I had this one girl that was new and didn't have a background in this area, just like so I joined this youth club with her, and I think I went for maybe a month, and she's Christian, so that's where this youth club happened, at like some church. But they did activities like go to like play laser tag and stuff like that. So eventually my parents told me that I can't go because they're scared that I'm going to convert to Christianity. And then I lost the only friend that I had.
This is such a
And
sad
That's
story.
sad.
I know.
The
So
But
it's
one
just them
friend that I
being so
had.
strict on you being the middle child, which is weird, but they were just very strict on you and expected.
they were strict
I don't know what it was.
with all of us, but
Yeah.
my siblings, they did whatever they wanted and they didn't care. Like my sister got beat up like crazy, which is why my brother and I are so scared. But my
Mhm.
brother didn't get beat up because he's the boy and my parents are sexist. And that's a
Yeah.
whole nother topic. Let's not get into that. But
We
So I
should
guess
have
the
another
difference is,
episode just for
yeah.
that. I think we could all relate.
I guess your sister just didn't care. So if
yeah.
you didn't
She
care,
didn't
then
care
you
if
would
she
have
got
been.
beat up. She's like, I'm used to this. I'm gonna go do whatever I want and come home and get beat up, and laugh about it.
Yeah.
And but I was too scared. And I mean, like, I did get beat up by my mom, when I was like much younger,
Mhm.
but not really my dad. Like, if he would yell at us, then we'll just start to cry, my brother and I.
Yeah. I think my parents were like that too, in terms of like hitting and stuff. Like maybe a little bit my dad, like when I was younger, but
Yeah.
like it's so rare. Like we weren't, and but I was like a goody two shoes, like in
Yeah.
elementary school,
Mhm.
especially. High school was a different story, but elementary school, goody two shoes, like 100%. So there was nothing for them to really want to do that. Like I think once the most my mom ever did, because it was grade 8 and me and my sister decided to stay at the park for a little bit after school, and she was in grade 4 at the time. So we were at the park for a bit, and then like after like maybe not even like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we look off in the distance and my mom is standing there. And we came home and my mom made us do mutti. Like mutti got like we had to sit on our knees. And that was the first time we were like, yo, what is this weird punishment? You're not grounding us, you're not taking away anything. It's just sit on, and then we had to sit on our knees for like half an hour or something. And it was like that.
That's
Yeah.
a Sri Lankan school punishment.
Right. But in terms of like hitting and stuff, like it wasn't, maybe they should have introduced it with the later children, but it wasn't really that main of a thing for us. But they did get beat more. They definitely got beat more though, because they were more trouble. They caused more trouble. So I remember, okay, so this story, I've always remembered this story, and it always, like here and there, it'll always just kind of come into my mind, but I never fully dissected it or analyzed it and wondered, why is this something that I remember from when I was young, like 3, 4 years old? Why is it so like, I just remembered it as like this memory, but yeah, like I said, never really fully understood what all of that entailed, I guess. So I'll just say the story instead of like talking about it in like abstract. But so when I was like 3 years old, I have this memory of when we were living in our old home. So at this time, I was just an only child. My sister wasn't born yet. So I remember this one night, and I was sitting on the couch it was just me and my mom. I don't no idea where my dad was. And I was laying on the couch and my mom was sitting up, but she was like kind of with her feet up on the couch, but at my feet. Right. So we were both under one blanket, just watching like a movie or watching TV. And it's such a nice memory that I have, like of me. I remember being so happy, like
Oh.
maybe because I was like staying up a little later than I usually would too. So I remember just being so happy, like, oh, like this is like the best, like, and I remember being so happy. And then like flash forward 1 year, where I'm 4 now. I have a younger sister. We're living in a different home. And I remember like my mom was sitting in our other like living room, and she was like sitting on the couch, and she was just like on the phone talking to somebody. So I remember bringing a blanket, and then I put it over her, and then I laid down on the blanket, like on the couch, sorry, and I put the blanket over myself. And then within like 5 minutes, like she was done her phone call, she just got up and walked away.
Aw.
Yeah. So
Aw,
like she didn't realize what I was doing, right? Like
of
she didn't
course.
understand why I was doing it, but I
Yeah.
like clearly remember like
Aw.
that moment. Like it was
Yeah.
just
It's okay. It's okay, Nalani. You're okay.
Do you guys have any other stories or anything like that?
It was actually like a nightmare for me if to even think about having a younger sibling. Like story like this kind of reminds me of that pretty much. Like, oh my God, I hope I never have a younger sibling because I want to be the youngest forever. And
Right.
luckily that I didn't realize how old my parents were when they had me. So I should have realized that at a young age that there were going to be no more children. But
it was physically impossible.
Exactly. But I think I had nightmares where some new baby came along and I'm just like, I don't like this baby. I don't want a baby in this family. Because I would be so jealous.
Yeah.
So that's actually what your story reminds me of.
What about you, Suganiya?
Yeah, I have one from when I was like probably 6 or 5 years old. So this is so I had this one doll, like those baby dolls that you could actually take the legs and arms off of them, So I used to do that a lot, take it apart, and
I don't think that was the purpose of the doll.
She's
okay. No, it's getting to it. It's getting there.
She's amputating this doll for no reason. Yeah.
So and I used to imagine that they were like when I'll take like an arm and a leg off, and then I'll imagine that they're all like another doll. And I used to I'll imagine them like sleeping with them, and I'll be like, I always wanted like 3 kids, like since I was like 5 or 6 years old. Like I'm gonna have my own family, I'm gonna have 3 kids just like my mom. Okay. So I'm be like, okay, the firstborn's going to sleep on one side, and the last baby's going to sleep on the other side, and then the second one, I'll just put it next to one of the kids. And it was always like that. That's what I had in my head for like the longest time. Like the second kid won't be next to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I didn't think about this till obviously like till I was like an adult, and I was like, why did I used to think like that? Why did I used to like? I don't know, like did that happen with me when I was that age? Like I don't remember, but I used to always think like, okay, first here, second here, and first here, the last one here, and the second child will be next to one of the kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird, right?
That's so crazy how like these things that our parents just do, which they don't even realize what they're doing, but even as children, how much we pick up on it and how much it affects us, right? Like
for sure. Yeah.
It's crazy to think.
The smallest little things probably affected us or shaped us to be the humans that we are now, and we don't even realize. Like I try to to think about, okay, what was it? What happened for me to be this way now? Of course, I can't seem to remember all those things, but like everything shapes you to be the person that you are now.
And now, Suganiya, now that you realize and understand that, like if you were to have a third child, I think you would take like extra care in making sure that kid.
I really hope so.
Yeah, like hopefully history doesn't repeat itself.
My second kid, I feel like I'm neglecting her because, Veda and I, it was just Veda and I for like a long time. So she's very attached to me. And sometimes, like, especially in the beginning when Bhumi was just born, Veda always needs to sleep with me. So, Bhumi would be crying, and then I'm holding her, and then Lalit would come and take Bhumi so I could stay with Veda. And it just hurt me so much. Like Bhumi's just like looking at me and crying, and I'm just like, oh my God, what am I doing to you?
Oh, hopefully she's not like 20, 25, 30 years down the line, like she's on a podcast talking about this memory of
my mom neglected me when I was one pretty much.
I know. Like maybe now also I can explain to Veda, right? Now she's a tad bit older. I can explain to her, no, Bhumi's crying, I need to be with her or whatever. You come to both of us, all 3 of us together. But in the beginning, like I couldn't, she was too young, she couldn't understand, and I couldn't explain it to her.
Sure. And you don't want her feeling neglected either, because another baby came.
Yeah.
Parenting is hard, man. Suganiya, good on you, and keep it going, and and we'll see if it ever happens for us. But honestly, it just seems like there's just so many things to think about and consider. And I obviously I have friends that have kids, and like I get anxiety just thinking about potentially having a kid one day. So.
No, yeah,
Oh
it's
my gosh.
scary. Just because like it seems like we have all this knowledge now, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, everything, every small little thing that we do, what if it affects them negatively? Like
Yeah.
I feel like that's the thing about parents, and they're probably worried about that. I
Yeah.
don't
It's a
think
Like,
completely different ball game now compared to our
exactly.
parents raising us,
yeah,
right? Like it was
exactly.
Yeah.
just like keep us alive and
Yeah.
it's fine. That was it. That's the
Yeah.
threshold that you had to meet. Like that was it.
Exactly. There's so much expectations now too, and yeah, it's you're right. Like it is a lot.
Yeah, like I was just like sitting down and writing some notes for this podcast, and then Boomy was just like at my feet, and she's like, and I'm just like writing, and then I was like, oh, I'm ignoring her, and then I put it away. Hi,
Forget the last like 2 minutes where I wasn't paying attention to you. I remember once, like I was this was like grade 2. So I'm only like talking about stories when it's just me and my sister because it was like this new kid being introduced and
Hmm.
then how things change. Because with the broad everything after that is like there's just so many. It just like it's I don't know. I feel like it's let's just talk about when one child like how it changed for me, how life
Hmm.
for me changed. So I remember in grade 2, again, it was just my sister at that point, and she was 3, I was 7. And I remember sitting in class, and over the PA system, there was an announcement, and it was like, okay, if you go home for lunch, and if you live on this street, and your house number is between this number and this number, come down to the office. So I was like, hey, I go home for lunch. I live on this street. My house number is between this number and this number. And I was just excited. I was just like, I felt so important. Like I was the only kid in my class. I got up and I was like, okay, I got to go down to the office. So I went down to the office, and then they asked me to call home, and they wanted to speak to my parents, right? So I called home, and my dad wasn't home. So it was just my mom, and she was at home with my sister. And she answered the phone, and I gave the phone over to the secretary. And the secretary explained to her that there was like a potential gas leak in the area.
Hmm.
So again, I'm 7 years old. So what she told her was either you can drop off lunch for her so she can stay here and have lunch, or you can come pick her up, bring her home, and then have feed her. Because I used to walk home by myself.
Hmm.
So you can, yeah, give her lunch and then you can drop her back after. So those were the two options. And then my mom asked her to pass the phone back to me. And then when I said hello, my mom was like, எனக்கு இல்லாது பார்த்து வாங்கோ. Okay, there's a potential gas leak. Okay,
Yeah.
like, it's safe to say that my mom didn't prepare me to handle gas leaks at the age of 7.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't know, I feel like she just took a look at the situation. She's like, worst case scenario, I already have another child, and this is a risk I'm willing to take, right? Like it was so like again, that's another story that I always think about. Like I don't know if anyone else's parents, like I think they would just been like, oh, I'll drop it, or like I don't know. I don't know if it's because there was another kid, or because my sister was 3. It's not like she was a baby and it would have been hard for her to like get her all like together and to come. Maybe like she felt like it would have been too much.
Hmm.
She was 3 years old, so it's like an okay age, like like it's just interesting. I don't
Sounds
know,
like you're traumatized by it.
a little bit.
Good.
just a tad, just a little tad.
It sounds like you're still a little upset and holding that against. No, I'm joking. Holding that against your mom.
I feel like I should bring this up with my mom, but I think it'll just be upsetting for her.
I'm
Like,
sure
and she'll
would she
probably say
even
some
remember?
reason why.
Do you think she'll remember it?
No, like for
Yeah,
her, I'm sure it's just like an insignificant moment in
exactly.
time, right? Like just
Yeah,
like the whole blanket story. Like if I told her, she'd be like, I don't ever remember
Yeah.
that ever happening. We
yeah.
never had blankets growing up, or like she would say something like crazy, like just like So yeah, like it wasn't, but it was insignificant for her, but it like
Mhm.
for me, I still remember it. I still think
Yeah.
about
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
So crazy.
I also feel like our parents, like, they don't know how to raise kids. Like we have so much knowledge, but for
Mhm.
them, it was like raising kids. It's like a community raising kids. That's how they grew up, right? And where they come to this country and they
Yeah.
have to do it on their own, and they made a lot of mistakes with us.
Yeah.
See, I don't know how I feel about that, just because like what is the right way, you know? And like that's kind of like what I'm kind of torn between. Like, was their way the right way, or are people in our generation being more knowledgeable and like taking all these extra, I don't know, I guess like thinking about everything 10 times more, like is that the better way? I don't know, maybe both, maybe either. Like every situation's different. So I think it's so hard because I feel like I look at my siblings and I'm like, you know what? We turned out okay. You know, we're
Yeah.
not I don't like I feel like my parents are pretty content with all of us. So I mean, I don't look at it as, oh, they don't know what they were doing necessarily, but you're right, like it was different in Sri Lanka because it's so many, it's your siblings children that your children are growing up with. It's you have your siblings to help take care of your own children. It is like a community raising
Sure.
children, and so yeah, it is a little different. But I mean, like, I don't know. It's just so hard to say, like, oh, is this the right way? Is that the right way? Or is this wrong? What they did was wrong.
They were busy, right? Because they had to come here. They have to earn. Like
Yeah.
both my parents worked, so there wasn't a lot of time for them to spend with us.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah, it's not like it's like the wrong way how they raised us. It's just I feel like some parents did better at adapting
Yeah.
to what the life was here and just trying to do what they can. And then others were still kind of stuck in how it was back home, but then they didn't make the changes they should have made when it comes to raising
For sure.
children here. Like my parents never went out to kind of put us in like swimming or, you know, like for us to learn, like even like I feel like life skills. They never really
Mhm.
put that effort. But I have cousins that are around my age that got to do that, that did all
Yeah.
of this stuff because their parents went out of their way to make sure
Yeah.
that they learned this stuff. So it is,
For
yeah.
sure.
So I feel
Yeah.
like it's different. It's different for everybody.
No, you're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, exactly. And it's
Yeah.
also the circumstances surrounding each
Yeah.
individual situation. And you're right. Like now that you bring it up, like there are things I do look at other people and I'm like, hey, like they have these skills that I don't have, or like you said, life skills that, yeah, I might not have the same things that they have, but then they might not have things that we have. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
that's just kind of like how I look at it. I'm like, it's just so hard to be like, this is the way, this is the best way to be to raise your children.
Yeah. No one really knows. Even
No
like
one
people
knows.
our
Yeah.
generation raising kids, people are raising their kids differently
Yeah.
because it's just you just kind of I guess go with your gut and you feel like this is right and you go ahead. Like I mean,
Yeah.
what ends up coming of that kid, no one can really
Yeah.
tell, you know, because
You can't.
you
Yeah.
don't know. You really don't know. So if you guys could choose like let's say, you know, like to be something other than the youngest child, Suganiya to be other than the middle child, like what would you choose? Either one of you can go first.
Well, I would choose to be a boy, but this
That wasn't the questions again. Yeah. You're getting into a different podcast topic that we're all going to be included in, right, Nalani? Where we're going to talk about how we don't like our brothers because they were.
no, I'd want to be the oldest. Like I know it comes with a lot of responsibility. Like my sister did a lot growing up and still does, right? Um, but I just feel like they listen to you, you know, what you say matters, you know, they talk to you. There's a relationship. Like I don't have that with my parents. I don't really have a relationship with my parents, but I see like no matter how much my sister and my parents fight or whatever, like they're like their own family sort of thing, you know, my sister and my parents. They're I feel like them three is so different from like my brother and I. You know, even though my brother's their favorite, they don't really have conversations, like proper conversation like my sister and my parents do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. All right, Vinu, what about you?
So before talking to Suganiya, I would have said middle child. No, I'm still gonna stick with middle child just because like I agree with Suganiya. It's just but in the opposite way because I can't imagine myself being the oldest. I just feel like there's so much pressure. And I know I've heard that from Nolani too in the beginning of this podcast. I see like I look at my sister and I'm like, I don't even think I'm half the person that my sister is because it's just so much. She had to take on, I feel like there was so much expected of her. And like I kind of do see like I feel like my parents do look at her as the golden child, to be honest. Because in their eyes, she's perfect, you know, like she's smart, she's successful, she takes care of the family. like you said, they have a great relationship with her, but like it's just too much pressure for me that I would rather be one of the children afterwards. So I'm
Like,
gonna
just
go
leave
with
me alone. Everyone
yeah,
just
like
leave me
please don't
alone.
expect anything of me. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna. Yeah, so I would go with middle child just for that reason.
Yeah, I would actually go with youngest. So I'm surprised that we all just chose like different
Yeah, I'm
ones.
Wait,
surprised you
sorry. Can
chose
I
middle
choose to
child.
be the youngest? Stay the
Yeah,
No,
youngest?
no, no, no,
yeah,
no.
I know you
Oh,
would want to be the youngest.
Yeah.
I would of course want to be the youngest. I would never change
Yeah.
that.
That's why I didn't give that option because I knew that Suganiya would choose something else, but I knew Vinu would be like, no, I want to stay. I knew. That's why I was just like, no, other, one of the other ones. But
Okay, I
I
got
would
a
want to
little
be the
confused there.
youngest too. But like, not
Yeah.
even like, I would take it a step further and be like in a bigger family, like more kids, other than just two kids and being the youngest. I feel like it's not the same. Like, I want a
Yeah.
little bit more. Like Suganya said, or sorry, or I think Vinu, you said it. When the parents are a little bit tired and they don't want to put that energy into parenting, I just, yeah, like I feel like that's the way to go. But then I would be even more of a wreck if you can imagine that. But yeah, I would go with youngest.
Yeah, I just feel like again, this is being the youngest. Like, there's so much. I feel like my parents personally, like this was my situation. There was just so much expectations when, like I said, when it came to my sister and even my brothers. They expected so much from them, and then when it came to me, they were just like, yeah, like do whatever you want, like we'll be like, even when it came to education, like my dad is so big on education, like my sister and my
Yeah.
brothers, they had to be like, they had to study like engineering or like neuroscience, like they had to. But when it came to me, it's just like, just please graduate, like that's all we really care about, just please get a degree and we'll be happy, like that's really the point that they were at with me.
Yeah.
And so I prefer that, to be honest,
That's
than to
so
be
great.
like
Yeah.
forced into a field. I don't know if they were forced. I can't speak for them, but like they were like kind of forced into that direction, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, like I've said it before, like law, like I don't know if I would have chosen law if my parents didn't put that in my head from when I was a kid. Like, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a lawyer. Well, more so my dad, but yeah.
Mm-hmm,
My
mm-hmm.
sister at one point, I don't even know when she decided she wanted to be a teacher, but it was just like, okay, like it's a
Yeah,
great profession, but
it
like
is.
they never tried to push her in any way. I really don't know how she made up her mind that she wanted to be, like
Mm-hmm,
how she decided it, and like that's her calling, like that's the direction she wants to go towards.
mm-hmm,
But it was just like there was none, it's like zero pressure put on her to choose any sort of career, any sort of field, or
mm-hmm.
anything. So, if you want to give like parents of this generation or our generation, young parents, a tip on how to deal with a youngest child or middle child or things to look out for, like what would you say, Vinu? You go first.
I mean, like just ideally, of course, like treat all your children the same. That's
Hmm.
obviously what would be the best. But I mean, like, who am I to say? Like, it seems next to impossible, right? Like when I don't know how it would be. I don't have kids myself, so I really don't know how that would even be possible, because in a lot of situations, parents do things, like you said, parents do things without them even realizing, right?
Right.
So I mean, of course, obviously, best case scenario would be that all children are treated equally. Not one is more important than the other, or one is more spoiled than the other.
Hmm.
It's That would be, I guess, my advice. But again, like it's so hard to answer that question, because like really, who am I? Like who am I to like give anyone advice about parenting?
No, because like as being the youngest, like you actually like being the youngest, right? So I like, even like the stories you said of quintessential, like I mean, like you being the youngest, like stories. It was just like when you were just like so adamant on getting something, and then you got it. So it wasn't like anything like, oh, parents, like, us being the youngest child, we, do expect you to expect more of us, and like there's no tip like that, because it's like, I don't know how else to say it. It's not like you feel like your parents could have done better job of raising you, right? Like you never.
No, I don't think so. But the only reason is because I feel like I could have been worse off. I like, these are just obviously stories of me being spoiled. There are so many times, obviously, they discipline me. I'm not some child running around, doing whatever I
Love
want.
child.
Like it wasn't like that. I was disciplined. I had to be disciplined. So like I don't know. I look at it, and even though I was spoiled, and like a lot of the times I feel like maybe it's in my head that I'm spoiled, and maybe I'm not. Like maybe no one spoils me.
It's just spoiled
Yeah.
compared to your siblings.
Yeah, like that's really what it is. Because like sometimes my brother looks at me and he's just like, "You're not spoiled. You just make yourself spoiled. Like it's just you making yourself spoiled." And a lot of the times I feel like they just kind of give up. Like they're just like, "Oh, like she's gonna do whatever she wants. Like what's the point? We can't tell her anything."
Yeah. What about you, Suganya?
Oh, um, my tip would be not to ignore the good kid. You know, just because you're busy with the naughty one, like maybe spend some time with the good kid. I don't know. Have conversations with them. Take them out or one-on-one time or whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
that would be it.
Yeah. And that actually reminds me, because I remember we had like this family meeting. It's a long time ago. It was like a few years ago. And I remember, I mean, I don't know if I should even say this, but I remember my sister kind of pointing out the fact that, which is something that we never even discussed or thought about, but she kind of pointed out to my parents, like, um, I did everything the right way. Like, I mean, in terms of, she finished school, she went to university straight out of high school. She finished her undergrad on time. She went and did her teacher's degree. She did that on time, and then she got a job right out. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
she did all the steps on time, properly, but that doesn't get any sort of recognition. But then my brothers take up so much of their time, but it's just like when it's negative stuff, there's attention and people are talking about it and everything like that, but my parents are talking about it. But when it comes to something positive, there's nothing. It's just like
Yeah.
you just do it, and then you just have to, I guess, just be happy, because like there's no one doing anything to celebrate your
Mm-hmm.
success, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
which is something that we never really thought about prior to that moment when she said it.
for sure.
And even
Yeah.
when my sister said it, my parents didn't understand what she was saying. Like, they
Mm-hmm.
didn't get it. And then I had to
Yeah.
explain it in Tamil and try to make them, understand. And I don't know. I don't know if they fully even understood at that point what was the point that we were trying to get across, or she was trying to get across.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the problem. Like, it's so hard for parents to understand what we understand. Or if
Yeah.
we're trying to explain something to them, they're not gonna. They think it's actually ridiculous because it's not something that they think is normal. It's like anything,
Right.
like whatever they think is right is normal, and then anything outside of that is like, what's wrong with you? That's
Yeah.
really how they look at it. So yeah, I have a
Mm-hmm.
really hard time trying to explain things to my parents as well
Yeah.
because they're just so yeah.
Whenever I try to talk to my mom about, things from my childhood, she just like ignores it. She just like
Mm-hmm.
walks away, doesn't say anything back, like not a single
Yeah.
word back. It's like as if I
Mhm.
didn't say anything at all. They just don't, I feel like they don't know how to, like they're not brought up that way,
Yeah,
speaking
Yeah.
about your emotions and whatever.
exactly. Yeah.
And
So,
they probably had, like, in their eyes, more bigger issues to deal with. So for them, like, "Idella morida," like, "Idella
Yeah,
morida, luwaba de kalaikaraata." You know what I mean? Like, is this even a
exactly.
big deal? Because for them, like, what they had to deal with growing up back home and then coming to a whole new
yeah,
country and doing all of this stuff, like, that's way more important. And, than
yeah,
like this, it to them, it might even seem petty, like that you're even bringing up such a small issue.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's the same, but I mean, it could affect whatever it is that we're going through could affect us psychologically, and they don't understand that. That's
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly what it is. They're just like, "Oh, that's not an issue. Like, just fix it." You know,
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not like you said, it's not like what we've had to deal with or whatever it is. It's
Hmm.
so hard to have these sort of conversations.
Yeah. Not even just our parents, because I remember having this conversation with Akash's sister. She's only 5 years older than me. But again, they came to Canada at a way later age. They experienced a lot more back home, and
yeah,
they went through all of the Civil War. They went through that. Like, they experienced it firsthand, right? So I remember having a conversation with her, and we're just talking about hair loss. And I remember telling her, like, oh, in high school, like, I lost a lot of hair in high school. And she's like, oh, like, how come? I'm like, I don't know, it's just like stress and, like, stuff I was going through. And she's like, oh, look at that stress. Like, inga poranda vanda ninga. Like, what do you know what I mean? So even her,
Yeah.
she's only 5 years older than me. But even for her, it was just like, if you were born and raised here, there should be nothing that you're complaining about.
Exactly.
Nothing like there should be like your childhood was amazing. Like that's
You're
it, right? But
privileged, if
you're
anything.
privileged, exactly. But like
Yeah.
you don't know, like because again,
Mhm.
there's only so much of me that she knows, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, like for me, I guess as being the oldest child, if I was to give any sort of tip, it would just be because of that blanket story. Uh, it's just like sometimes we might not be able to verbalize how we're feeling, or not like or even know how to, or even know at that point, at that time, what exactly that we're going for us to be able to express it, but we'll show it. So look out for those little things, like,
Yeah.
and I think it speaks volumes, like actions speak louder than words. So those little things, kind of just look out for it, just to that's just us kind of letting you know that this is how we're feeling without even really understanding it ourselves at that time. So that's
Mhm.
just a little something.
As I mentioned before, like I don't really have a relationship with my parents. It's not like they ever, spoke to me. Like, so even now, like sometimes my mom would call me. It's only after I got married and moved out that my mom tried to talk to me. Right, like
Mhm.
she'll call me and say like just ask me like, oh, what are you cooking? What did you make? Or stuff like that. But like I can't get the words out to have a conversation with her. I'm just like, okay, like when am I going to hang up? It's just like the way I was brought up, like just being ignored, and then suddenly you want to have this relationship with me. I don't know how to do that, especially being like the quiet and reserved. Like I feel like that, that's a part of it too, where it's just so hard for me. Like sometimes I'll think like I feel bad that she's calling me and she's wanting to have a conversation with me. Like I should try, but I don't know. Like I don't know what to say to her, you know?
Yeah. But that could also just be like communication, because even though I'm the oldest, I don't know how to have a conversation with my parents properly. Like unless we're
Mm.
making fun of each other or complaining about each other. Like that's it. Like I don't like it's so awkward for me even when I go over now, like to sit down and have a normal conversation with my dad. It's a foreign concept. We don't talk. We don't talk like that, We don't talk about
Yeah.
serious, like just like normal things. Like I wouldn't know
Emotions.
what to say.
Yeah, things like
Yeah.
that.
My mom is the same thing. It's like unless like some topic comes up that okay, I'm like okay, I can talk about this, but just having just like a regular conversation, like I don't know how to do it. And I know her and my sister probably talk more because I for whatever reason, like I feel like their conversations, like they're able to hold that conversation. Whenever my mom calls, it's just like, oh, like சாப்பாடு இருக்கு வந்துடுத்து போ, like it's not just
Very
like
short.
and also I don't like talking on the phone. I don't like the in this like just those conversations. What are you doing? Like I
Yeah.
don't like conversations. So that can kind of be a part of it too. But
Yeah. No, I
it's just
agree. My sister and my mom, and also again, it's because she's so much older than me. Like she can go on talking to my mom for probably, I don't know, an hour. I don't know what they
mm,
talk about, but they seem to talk almost every day. Like every day my sister's done work, my mom usually calls her. And I don't think
mhm,
I'll have that really. I don't see myself having that relationship with her. And it could also be because of the age gap. Like where my mom and I have nothing in common sometimes. I look at us and I'm like, what do we have in common? Like what do like I don't even know what to
yeah,
talk about with you. And then there's another thing, like to be honest, it's kind of like a language barrier. Like although I know the language and I speak to her, there's things that I don't like, maybe I might not be able to convey as easily as I would if obviously I'm speaking in English. So I
mhm,
am able to have conversations with my dad because of that, and clearer conversations, and he understands and we understand each other. But with my mom, I don't know. It's just there's like so many different factors for why maybe we're not able to. So even being the youngest, same thing. Like it's just
yeah.
it's difficult.
All right. Thank you, both of you, for joining me. And thank you, everyone who's listening. If you have any feedback on today's episode, please do reach out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Grateful?
Thankful.
Last.
Yay. Any questions before we start?
I really do feel like this is going to be some sort of therapy session for Suganiya.
Hey everyone, this is That Brown Bitch, and I'm your host, Nalani Salvasingam. Joining me today, I have Suganiya. I can't with your face.
I was trying. No.
I think you're trying not to really react, but you're doing like 10 reactions. Like it was just like boom, boom, boom. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
You're laughing, but it's like I'm scared.